That's how we was. And we are going on the air.
We are live.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, 29th, and it's just after 9 a.m. This is a meeting, a
We're on live.
joint meeting with Senate Natural Resources and Senate Economic Development. The House took action on 687, and so we are doing a high level walkthrough. I know an hour is not that much time, but it's at least a good, we can get a running start on the whole thing and come back this time, schedule more time to come back, dig into things in more detail. So it's an ambitious schedule. I was asking, thank you, Representative Baumgartz, for coming in after what was probably a pattern in some of tonight. If you could, we all have the amendment that you offered and shared on our website. So for anyone following the draft that we're looking at, it's draft 5.1 of page 687. It's dated 5/8/24, timestamp 2:31 p.m. So that's our working document. And we'll also have a side-by-side coming or section by section.
Want that now?
Sure, and so Representative Baumgartz, thank you for coming. If you could walk us through, maybe let's figure out how we're aiming to do this in like 15 minutes, right? I know some ambitious, but we've been here before. So you could tell us what you all did and why.
I'll just do that. I'll do the overview and Ellen obviously will do that. So I was just showing our committee I'm a very methodical person and I spend a long time preparing slow reports. This was last night's. Because it was we were working. Yesterday was a big day.
Yeah.
With a lot of negotiation. This was the classic, as Senator Gordon considered, kind of a classic long exercise. Try to stay in touch with the Senate and stay in touch with a wide diversity of people in the House and getting to yes. And so that was our goal the whole time. The thing over to us, the goal was how do we get to yes on this? Because there's so many really important underlying pieces to this. So we just do hopefully largely from memory, because I've had no time to prepare for this, some of the key things that we did. Not necessarily in order of importance, a little thing, but it matters, is that we moved up the date by which the members of the nominating committee are appointed by a month, because that gives us a month. And the reason for doing that is that we moved up the date for appointment of the members of, and we did, by the way, accept the name, the LURB.
We heard.
So but we moved up the date by which the board is appointed to January 1 of 25, which gains us 6 months in the whole, the overall time frame, and gives that board. We had testimony, I wouldn't say testimony, discussions with the existing NRB to the effect that, they think that can all work and be ready for that transition. We can get the members appointed. This is just 5 months. And so it moves up the time frame, gives them more time for all the rulemaking that's inherent in all of this.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you mind just telling us which sections you're referring to?
Yeah.
Those, I'm trying.
Okay, I was just giving you the.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying not to.
Oh, okay.
Like, do a walkthrough.
I like all the big differences.
Well, excuse me.
We're doing that.
So let's.
I was just doing a big overview.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just try to think about the key things. And the other thing, really the bill for us, as I said before, or in the caucus, is there's really two major changes that we considered in this. Those are those pieces, but it really was the issue of the board hearing appeal, which was a really hard pill to swallow, frankly, but we did because that's the process. We accepted reality on that. And the other was all of the interim provisions that came from the Senate process, which were, we had put in some extended deadlines from S-100 last year, and the Senate, and we get it, wanted to do more housing more quickly. And we accepted, but first we were not thrilled about the idea of a 1/4 mile and a half mile around, and we ended up accepting that, realizing that, so we almost entirely accepted all of those sectors over from the Senate. I think the only thing we added was to make sure that there was planning and zoning, and that there was sewer or water or appropriate soils. This is the language, basically the language you said over with regard to 1B, just to make sure that, so actually, as an overview, I think I just did it. Yeah, those are the major pieces. And let me just look and make sure that there's.
Sure, Senator Watson.
Representatives, I'm wondering if, when you're referring to ensuring that there's planning and zoning, are you talking about what we would call the 1B areas?
No, we're talking about all the exemptions.
Oh,
You had the temporary exemptions. We left, oh, by the way, I left, okay, here's one key thing we did. We moved all the expiration dates for the exemptions to January 1 of 27. The regional commissions told us that they can get the maps done in 18 months. So starting from July 1 of 24, that gives 18 months to end of 26, and then that gives a year for the approval process to take place and for towns to apply for the 1A status if they want to. So along these lines, we also moved the 1B process back to the we had it with an opt-in. We think it's just a letter from the select board, and that almost all were opt in, but we wanted to give the towns the ability to make that decision themselves. So I think it's, we accepted that the board would not hear appeals. We started the board 6 months earlier to get more time for rulemaking and preparation. We accepted the exemptions almost as written, except added a requirement for that make sure there's planning and zoning and water or soils. We moved those dates to the expiration date to January 1/27, when there was plenty of time for the 1As and the 1Bs to come into effect by then. And I think that's the big picture.
Do you want questions now or go? Okay. So we need to understand your vision of the sequencing better, because communities have until 2027 now to determine where tier 1A and tier 1B would be. At the same time, you've required jurisdictional opinions.
Yes.
So you've required jurisdictional opinions that have to be applied for by the end of 2026.
Yes.
How does that square? How do you actually plan for that?
Difference.
Right,
Because they have to apply for the jurisdictional opinion one day before the 1As and the 1Bs would come into effect under the January 1 of 27. So we just have to be a cutoff date. We made it one day before the temporaries expire, but as long as you've applied for your jurisdictional opinion by then, you can continue to have the exemption.
see, jurisdictional opinions can take a long time.
Just have to apply for them.
Right, but even planning a project that's ready for a jurisdictional opinion, you have to get your financing. You have to be, relatively certain that your project meets those exemptions and is in an area that's designated for growth. You took out planned improvements from tier 1A. So I'm not saying how they could agree, like, we have these projects happening right now in our community, Montpelier Berry do as well. They're now cut out.
So they would have 2.5 years to apply for your jurisdictional opinion.
But if you take out planned improvements, then they have to have the existing wastewater capacity to know that they can do the project. They can't plan for future wastewater capacity.
Yeah, because we were, future could be 10 years.
That's right, so they are now shut out of,
If they don't have, if they're applying to do it. The jurisdictional opinion are trying to utilize the temporary exemptions, they must do it in an area with sewer or water or appropriate soils. Which almost means you can do it.
but you remove planned improvement.
Yeah, you can't do it. Based on, I mean, if you were, part of your application were to connect to sewer, that would work. But it can't be that you're gonna wait and see if the town builds a sewer system. I guess is that's what that's our logic. So I'm not sure, I think that, you know, so if you're applying for an exemption. Well, the bar is actually pretty low. It's sewer or water or soils, pretty low bar. And you have to be in an area with planning, so. Subdivision rates. You got 2.5 years to file that for that JO.
You have one,
24. Yeah, I'm sorry, 1 minute. Yeah, to the end of 26. Yeah, 18 months. Okay, bye.
Any other questions, like, before we go to the lawyer?
Finish his overview.
No, I think that's not good. We're big.
Yeah.
We've often the smaller stuff, but that.
We're here for lawyer, and thank you for coming up. It's good for us to just know what you all were thinking when you made that proposal. So we're talking about that Act 50 focus stuff. There are a lot of changes on the money side of things, and who I mean, can you just tell us how that folded in and who can speak to those points?
Yeah,
Someone can go, why did you do this?
Yeah, I will tell you, I can't answer any of these questions because I had no bandwidth for
Yeah.
following that.
Who would be a house?
Representative Demerov from Corinth, reported for the Ways and Means Committee, and Representative Stevens reported for the committee on.
Ask you all on the amendment. Okay, thank you.
Those were the 3 reporters.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So my guess is between Kirby and Patrick, they would be well represented.
Right, but they can't explain motives.
it's
Goals.
really clear what they did. Not as clear.
Yeah, I mean, you could say all the words speak for themselves, but it's just helpful to hear how you were,
Yeah, well, they were thinking, sorry, of course.
So, any other questions for the kind of process? And then again, it's just like a first look, but because we're gonna lose people to a conference committee. And who wants legal needs to go?
I have one more question for Seth. So, I mean. Really wanna make sure that we like look around and honor rural voices, cause that's not me. And talk about tier 3 a little bit. I think there's a piece in there where. Now any subdivision kicks you into Act 250 and tier 3?
Oh, glad you brought that up. No.
No,
no.
okay,
What we did was we just referenced subdivision as part of the rulemaking. And so the board will look at how and whether and to what extent whether and how subdivisions might fall into subdivision is part of Act 250. So we had one moment. We looked at a piece that would have said the subdivisions automatically trigger in a
okay,
tier 3 area, maybe we didn't do that.
thank you.
It was just looked at,
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
but we had to even put it into one thing.
Okay.
But that's a consideration.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a question about which topic took the most time or the most heated discussion?
Well, I think the board not hearing appeals,
Okay.
something that the House felt very strongly about and the committee felt very strongly about. And that was a huge issue. And so that was a big give. But then the next I think was the rings around the temporary exemptions. So we were very nervous about the rings around. But in the end, frankly, despite that nervousness, we just sort of brought ourselves around to a little bit of guardrails, and there's temporary and there's permanent. We focused on the permanent.
Thanks.
I hear, your chair feels as strongly against transit corridor exemptions as I feel as strongly about transit corridor exemption. We both drive on Route 7, so we have different opinions of what should be developed there, like more housing instead of Dollar Generals.
Well, actually, we agree, but we wanted to let the maps, we would have the regional commissions, it's one of the categories. In the, as the regional commission put together the maps, we want to let them do that success. And then, because that's exactly what the language for the transition zones is. And we wanted to make sure that that process was done, it'll take a couple extra years. That's what was done. We put that together pretty carefully in this instance. So that was.
No further questions for Representative Monaghan? Somebody?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you for the work that the House did on this bill to start it out, to come back with a proposal and to accept a very different opinion on, I think, like the foundational piece that you tried to fill. So I really appreciate the work that your committee did, and I understand that you're dealing with a very tense topic. And you know, I think Senator Renner and I are the only official Senate members of the Rural Caucus, mainly because it's Thursday at 8 a.m. So it's a hard time for a lot of other folks. But I really respect the position that you came from, and I'm personally feel comfortable with the changes that you've made. And I hope that we can move this bill forward. So thank you for
Saying that. There was a lot of negotiation with rural Vermont after that. The last couple of days, and it really, you know, it changed the bill. So,
Yeah.
because we wanted to, we've always had in our minds a focus on rural Vermont.
Yeah.
It didn't, some people didn't always see that, but it was always there as part of what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have quite a few in Kimmy who live in rural,
Yeah.
so I feel like we've had them in mind because we live there, so.
Yeah, we all have rural on one phone. but-
Yeah.
All of Vermont.
Yeah, yes. All of
Yeah,
it.
we're all-
We all have.
We all have-
So let's put it a little in perspective.
So thanks so much. Because Mr. Keaton has to leave at 9:30, let's jump to that section of the,
So, yeah, Paul.
thank you, Representative Bonnegar.
Yeah, thanks.
What time did you guys get off the floor on this?
Well, I think I started at 8 last.
Yeah.
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 Right here was
And what was that?
7:40, I went till 9:40.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Let's see what about. Okay,
Thank you all.
thank you, Mr. Keaton. You could give us the high level clues on your sections, that'd be great for, we don't even believe.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds great. So Kirby Keaton Legislative Council. I'll walk through the tax and revenue sections. I'm going to start on section 68. So section 68 was removed. There wasn't really any substance there of immediate impact. It was some change to the terminology used for downtown and village center designations that was supposed to take place in 2027. Conflicts and Means, I think, felt like that's going to, like, since there was no substantive change and there's going to be further work on changing the designations, that they decided to just remove it for now and let that be done later. So no substantive change, just changes the terminology, but they wanted to just wait.
But we haven't deleted down that text, right?
Yeah, it's just changing the names, designated centers. I think was the terminology that was going to be changed to.
Okay.
And then in section 73 is the next stop. And that was the property transfer tax of 2.5% rate for the second homes. To give you some background that I'm aware of, I know the Department of Taxes had claimed that it was going to be hard to administer that model. So the House changed it back to the version of property transfer tax reform that they wanted from HA 29.
Thank you for saying plain.
Huh?
Thank you for saying plain. Cause I
Uh,
talked to the commissioner and he said the same thing to both of us. Which is that they can do it. They asked for an extra month, but that. I will hold the other comment, but the plain part is important because they did tell us that they could do that.
So the structure that's in place here now, that replaced it, I don't know if you're familiar with HA 29, maybe. It would impose a 3.65% property transfer tax rate on the value of properties exceeding $750,000. So the only increase in tax would be the value exceeding $750,000. So it's marginal, in other words,
That includes commercial property,
it does.
which is essentially a tax on all commercial property.
Including residential rental.
So that is a difference. The second home rate would have been just principal residences that or just residences that were not principal, sorry. Would have been residential properties, and this was the target there. So this change would apply to all types of properties, that's true. And then the House also increased the thresholds.
Oh, it did, okay, because it's silent.
It increased the thresholds for principal residences, so under current law. The first 100,000 in value is taxed at 0.5% under current law. The last time these were updated, by the way, and the last time the rate was updated goes back to the 80s. I think it was 1988, I want to say. Was the last time any of this stuff was changed. So it's updated because the value that's taxed at 0.5% is going from 100,000 to 200,000. So the first 200,000 of value would be taxed at a lower rate. And then for those that have a BHCB, VHFA, or USDA mortgage assistance, that's being increased from 110 to 200,000, and that's not taxed.
And
Sarah Cummings?
we've left the Veterans Administration out, but I was talking to someone this weekend and their child just got a veterans loan, so they are doing loans, and I'm not sure why, if we're doing mortgage assistance, we aren't doing veterans mortgage assistance.
And Sarah, I don't know if you have it, there is a section section.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they are looking here, but I heard yesterday they were going to address the issue that they would be creating with residential rental housing. That they acknowledged that this was a big hit to larger multifamily properties.
The change which we can get to is they created a partial exemption that's targeted at farms.
Oh, I knew that, okay.
To make it so that this
Yeah.
higher marginal rate does not affect certain farms, and
Right.
we'll get to that.
And you can actually do the same thing with the second home property transfer tax.
To
exempt farms, so we're not worried about farm properties,
We could include.
but they didn't touch the residential rental concern.
Oh, yes, to the extent that, say, an apartment complex is worth more than 750,000, it would be affected by this.
Yeah, this is the sale of a large, if you are an apartment building owner and you sell your apartment building. Yeah, okay. Not,
So the 750 is very low for all properties.
yes, understand,
I mean, super low.
if you own a very large rental property and you sell it. I guess
That's affordable housing, that's a lot of things,
It's a lot of it.
that's multi-unit property.
I understand.
To address the veterans mortgage, by the way, is that's not in current law, that would be just, if that addition were made, it would be added.
I just wanted to check on time, how far we need to go, so we can.
Wendy's.
Say that.
The chair of the conference committee is in the room, so as long as she's here, I'm fine.
For hospitals, right?
I think, I'm not sure what this committee is on, I hope we're back in 3 minutes. And if they have any proposals, they could have had them drafted, so you can stay here. If something weird shows up, we'll come back.
And what are the other big,
So let's moving, because we do only have till 10 for all.
So to keep moving through these, there's a small increase to the clean water surcharge. It's
what section?
74. It's being changed from 0.2 to 0.22, and that is to offset the increase in thresholds for the clean water surcharge too, so that currently there's no clean water surcharge on the first 100,000 of value. That's also being increased to the first 200,000 of value, and to offset that cost, the rate for value more than 200,000 is increasing the first two.
Can I ask a question?
And therefore,
We have a committee on it.
I've heard I've heard a concern that it increased the rate, but it didn't direct the funds. Is that a problem?
no, the clean water fund under this would still be the source, or, the revenue would be constant of clean water fund.
Okay,
And that's why the rate was increased, to keep
Okay.
the impact on clean water fund neutral.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it has the appropriate language it needs to go to the water fund.
Mhm.
Okay,
And just, side note, but Act 85 of 2017 has some serious changes to the clean water surcharge and the clean water fund. That's still on the books, that will happen unless something changes before now in 2027.
2027,
Yeah. Those are the PDT changes. There's a section 75, is a conforming change related to what we were just talking about with the changes in 2027. Section 76, changes the statutory allocation for the transfer tax revenue to the municipal regional planning fund from 17% to 13%. That's actually a neutral change because of the additional revenue being raised. So that's why the rate is being reduced, because the overall pool of money is increasing. Section 77, replaces there was in the Senate version of this, there was a $900,000 statutory allocation to the Act 250 permit fund. That was deleted by the House, but that money is moved to a fiscal year 25 appropriation. So the amount that the bill is sending this year to the NRB is the same, is my understanding. It's just that statutory allocation is removed. There's also a change for the general fund allocation in statute. It's being changed from 33% to 37%, so that is an increase in the amount of transfer tax revenue going to general fund, at least in statute. Of course, that we all know that's always not what's doing, so it is what it is. We have in section 78, the fiscal year 25 transfers. This section represents the additional revenue raised by the proposal. It's the budget already has the base amounts being transferred, but the additional revenue that this would raise, 6.1 million of that is being sent to Vermont Housing Conservation Trust Funds, and 1.27 is for municipal regional planning fund. So again, it's in addition to what's being transferred under budget.
but it's almost exactly what we proposed, maybe $1 million.
I think that
It's similar.
it is similar. It's a little bit more to VHCB.
I see, sorry, I see, have you been tracking this and had time enough that you're updating a physical note on?
So
the bill?
for the record, Ted Burnett, joint fiscal office, I'm working with Pat Titterton on the other side of the wall to develop a fiscal note on this. I was simply nodding along with the more by about $1 million than the allocation to the VHCD. Yes.
So an increase of what, 10 to the VHB?
I'm gonna go back and look to confirm the exact number. I was
But
just confirming the general sentiment.
It's not wildly, is that, So Pat,
You just asking, sorry, Patrick, but it's not, they just asking what the Senate proposal was sending to the trust fund. That was 5.1.
oh,
So
so
this is 6.1 is close to
it's a million more.
yeah. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Sections 79 through 83 are deleted. In the Senate version, this was the administration's proposal to do a property value freeze in the HUD program. The Senate Finance had modified it to try to orient it toward flood impacted communities. I won't give you all the background on that, but the House decided to remove it.
Was this the sections that had the TIF district piece in it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so these are all just gone.
All gone.
Okay.
Don't have to worry about all the tip stuff,
Oh,
unless you want to add it back.
I'm feeling.
So we're getting near the end of the tax revenue stuff. Section 83A is the amends the property transfer tax exemption section of law. There are 3 things there. One is an exemption for transfers of abandoned properties for rehabilitation. This is a modification of the administration's proposal to have a PTT exemption for blighted properties. The House changed that term blighted to abandoned, and it's a bit more narrow than the administration's proposal because of that. So instead of having a definition of blighted as a definition of abandoned.
Can you say the definition of abandoned?
The gist of it is, if a municipality acquires it through tax sale or, it's basically a municipality's acquiring properties and then they're deemed abandoned. The definition does not strictly mean abandoned because there could be instances like with a tax sale where the owner is known.
Can I ask a question of Ted?
Yeah, thank you.
You probably had to try and do a fiscal analysis of this. Do you have an estimate of how many properties are considered abandoned?
So we primarily looked at, within the property transfer tax data, if there's any indication of a tax sale, so that would be part of the definition. And that's what we came up with an estimate that would be negligible, so just narrows the roll down from $400,000 and blighted to something that's a negligible. amount.
But negligible might mean there's just not a lot of them. Do you have a number?
There's not a lot of them. I'd have to go and see what I pulled out. Again, I wouldn't want to put a number on it because I wouldn't rely on the property transfer tax data to perfectly indicate which one applies to the tax sale, because there's no chart in the code. It relies on essentially the completing attorney to specify somewhere in the form that there was a tax sale involved. And I can give you the definition real quick. Abandoned means real estate owned by a municipality and acquired through condemnation. That's what I was remembering. Or a tax sale, provided the real estate has substandard structural or housing conditions, including unsanitary and unsafe dwellings, and deterioration sufficient to constitute a threat to human health, safety, and public welfare.
Yeah, there are blighted properties that are not abandoned.
Right.
Correct. In our towns of Springfield, that's their big issue there.
Yeah, and we actually. I'd love to see how this syncs up with the bill we worked on in Seneca Box.
The owner won't, and just
Yeah.
doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, well, we have this problem in Moore, we had this problem all of this today,
So let's press on, and again, I know it's a little frustrating, but. Want to hear, especially for the 250s, the Act 250.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm trying to move quickly. There's also a new PTT exemption for transfers of new mobile homes that have a Energy Star label or are part of this pilot program from the Department of Energy. Energy efficient mobile homes, transfer tax exemption, just some quick background on that. Not all mobile homes are subject to transfer tax. It depends on how they're sold. Like sometimes they're sold as personal property, in which case this wouldn't apply, they would be sales tax. But for those that meet the conditions of being real property, transfer tax would apply, and this could be available. It's basically if you're purchasing it with a mortgage, and this is a real property, would be the scenario that comes up.
Okay, and then we have the partial exemption to PTT. So this is a new concept. All of the transfer tax exemptions in the statute right now are full exemptions. This is creating a partial one. So it states that the following transfer shall not pay a rate higher than 1.25% of the value of the property transfer. So that would be the treatment under current law. So this extra 3.65 on the additional value comes on. And in this case, it applies to transfers of property that are enrolled in the use value appraisal program and will continue to be enrolled after transfer, provided at least 25 acres are enrolled in agricultural land. And the transferee is a farmer, so it has to be in current use, it has to stay in current use after the transfer. And both parties basically would need to qualify as a farm according to it. So it's not all current use.
Yes, because it would be a huge exemption.
It would be, so they tried to make it quite tight to be your stereotypical farm and to remove any chance of a hobby farm using it.
Nice, so this is where they could have put additional exemptions for residential rental affordable housing.
And you could too.
And I
All
could,
set up for you.
We could.
if I can. Just hold.
Okay, sections 84 and 85 were deleted in the Senate. And that's it. One other thing I should note that I drafted, I'm not sure, it's not exactly tax related, but going all the way down to 113B, section 113B, that's the $1.3 million appropriation for NRB. And that's related to the 900,000 I told you earlier that was moved.
Right, to their budget, you said.
No, it was moved within the bill. 113B that was previously a $400,000 appropriation NRB, and it was increased by 900,000. And then there's some effective date changes, but some of the transfer tax stuff has an effective date of August 1st because the dark department said they needed another month.
Yeah.
And that's it for the tax stuff.
Sarah Brock, why, any questions? I want to make sure I'm passing you by this is your I'm missing our thing. Right, and Senator Watson.
Sucking it on.
Yeah. Say. Right. Stay here.
All listening, we're active listening.
Active listening, all right, so thank you for excusing. Let's swap over and go to section 1. Sorry, Mr. Ray. This is. I get off.
I mean,
Well,
so much better, it's like we found this.
all right, so
Hi, Alan.
let's do the,
Hello.
what can we do in 15 minutes?
Really,
So,
we have.
Ellen Jakowski, House Legislative Council. I wasn't gonna go through the section by section, I was gonna go through the amendment itself because that is actually changing the language, so you'll need to look at the Senate proposal. This is the big doc, and then the House proposal is only 29 pages or whatever. And so it's instance by instance of amendment, because some of them are very small changes to what you said.
But it isn't just to make sure if someone's trying to follow, it is this draft 5-1 from 231, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And then just to, that you have the section by section, the section by section reflects the whole bill as it has come to you. So it includes the things that you passed, and so just because this is only 31 pages, that means that they've accepted the other 100 and whatever pages. And they've only tweaked these parts, and so the section by section reflects all of that. And I pointed out a few of the places where it changed. So the first instance of amendment is that they put back in the session law purpose section, they shortened it to only the couple of sentences that are there. The second instance of amendment, Representative Bongart's mentioned, which was moving up when the appointments for the nominating committee are needed, June 30th. In the self-certification section, the third instance of amendment strikes the requirement that it be notarized. That's for Act 250 self-certification. The second, on the second page, the fourth instance of amendment, this again changes the date by which the governor will appoint to January 1, 2025. And those that have not been appointed, terms will expire. That's also the fifth instance of amendment, so it changed the date from July 1 to January 1 in a couple of places. Next, the sixth and seventh instance of amendment add clarifying language to the road rule. This is actually language that your committee passed out in its prior version.
It's
Does it look familiar?
reads very
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah, so the House had taken it out to make the rules shorter, and so this is just adding clarifying language that routine maintenance and repair of class 4 roads does not trigger the need, and that updates that are underway. So in the 7th instance of amendment, CC is what is new, and so improvements that are underway when this takes effect don't count, which I think was implicit, but now it's clear. Next, in the 8th instance of amendment, they made a few changes to the tier 3 rulemaking. So in the tier 3 rulemaking section, they struck the word recommend. They also added new language in number 5, which is number 5. And they also added language in number 3. So Representative Bongartz touched on this. On page 4 in number 1, they added reference to how subdivisions would be addressed under tier 3. They also added number 5, which is, can you
Yeah.
that out?
Cause it's not all.
page what?
It's not.
Okay, you're right there.
No, I see, like,
I didn't.
So they changed 3.5 and part of 1 recently.
so one,
So, this is the rulemaking directive to the Natural Resources Board, and so on page 4. In number 1, on the list of things that the rulemaking should address. Any necessary clarifications, including whether and how subdivision should be covered under tier 3, that has been added. In addition, they've added number 5 of this list. Which is if a critical natural resource is not recommended, they should provide the rationale.
That's great, because we struggled with that question of if you got a sliver in tier 3 or a sliver in something else, how would you?
And related to this, they then were wrestling with the question of, well, how are these things going to be conveyed? Because this is rulemaking, it's a little bit awkward for them to be providing narratives. So the 9th instance of amendment has been added to this section still that says, when they file the rules with LCAR, they shall also submit a report to the General Assembly describing the rules and the issues they addressed, under this section.
Can I ask a question? This doesn't remove the public process?
No.
Okay, I just wanna make sure. Is there anything struck in here that's of importance to, from what we did? This is additive only.
Yes. The only word that was struck was the word recommend.
right, and. Right, that's on 3, right?
Yes, they struck the word recommend because they were confused about who they would be recommending it to and. It's a lot of interesting grammar in that section to begin with, so. Page 5, the 10th instance of amendment, starts with the exemption portions. And so, section 24 is the, sunset exemption from Act 47. This is the unlimited priority housing project. So it's changing the date to January 1, 2027. And then it's also adding, as you heard, located in areas within the downtowns, NDAs, growth centers, or within 1/2 mile around those designated areas with permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws served by public sewer or water services or soil that are adequate for wastewater disposal.
Didn't we do 2027 also?
I thought we had accepted that,
Yeah, then I think actually the House did it and
and then we had,
we.
Right, because that's the only thing we did was expense, but. Oh, yeah, if I could try. I'm not.
Sure. So they went, I mean, honestly, I rewrote it 4 times, so
That is fair.
it's clearer probably in your brain than it is.
We laid this where we meant to.
Mhm.
Next, in the 11th instance of amendment, section 25 has been amended. Your section 25 has repealed not only section 19C, but also section 16A. So section 16A is not being repealed and it is on page 6. It's the 12th instance of amendment. Section 16A is the JO requirement for the interim exemption provisions. And so they kept the JO requirement. So on page 6, it includes the unlimited PHP exemption as well as the new interim housing exemptions in DD.
So it keeps all housing in the larger designated areas.
This is
as
the
an
exemption.
Yeah,
This is the JO exemption. Yes.
so they didn't change the numeric value of it, that
Correct.
What does it change?
We're gonna get there.
Oh,
This is just the JO part. So next, in the 13th instance of amendment, is the tier 1B section. So the changes in this section, it is striking the whole section, so the only changes that are here though are, one, they did incorporate your sentence about. They can have multiple non-contiguous areas, receive tier 1B, so that has been added, and then also.
I'm sorry, can I go back to JOs?
sure.
I have JOs always required a project to be complete by a certain time frame?
So. No, so in this language, yes.
But not always.
Okay,
Yeah.
What you were asking.
The other thing that they did in the tier 1B section is that, they struck your subparagraphs C and D. They replaced them with their C, and the reason for this is C lays out the requirements to get the tier 1B status. You had added just a cross-reference to the village area requirements, which, as I think you all figured out, had a bit of a conflict in it because it simultaneously required permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws will also automatically designate, while automatically incorporating areas that don't have permanent subdivision bylaws, and that was something that was important to them, so it was in your version, it was automatically making tier 1B areas designated village centers. And this is going back to basically the same requirements, except that they have to, it's not automatically existing village centers. They have to have the requirements here. Yes,
And
and it's opt-in, sorry, so that was subsection D with the opt-out and the loss of benefits. So those have been struck.
yeah, mine can be good now.
I can probably talk to the NRC and others after about this, but this was my concern that we looked at maps that were like, hey, any of this could be tier 1B, and it's a much bigger, you could find chunks that are along transit corridors in an adjacent parcel that's perfect for development, and I'm worried this changes what those maps would look like, and I just wanna talk to people about that, because this is exactly what I was afraid of, is that tier 1B would shrink down to very little.
Well, okay, so let's keep going. I'm.
Shrink concern. Noted.
Assume,
Yeah.
are you thinking about the shrinking in terms of like not requiring zoning?
Land growth, land
So
improvement,
no, so
permanent
no,
subdivision
no,
bylaw.
right, so that you would automatically include places that don't have subdivision or that don't have zoning, but are village centers.
Plan subdivision bylaws. I mean, that's why I wanna ask the BNRC, because this was a lot of.
This person,
Katie's right there.
Oh, hi, Kate, I didn't see, I'm like just trying to scan to see, I mean, you made the maps. I really wanna look at the maps again. To understand, like, it always felt like a rosy picture of like, this could be tier 1B, this could be tier 1B, and that, I always worried that. That would disappear the more constrained that this got, because that's the area where we're actually gonna build housing. So I have a lot of concerns about these pieces.
Well, I'll say that.
It'd be good to get, I think I've seen you maps, we had some homemade maps, screenshots.
They're also homemade. That means everything this much as
We
we.
could get, anyway, another story.
Permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws have been required throughout this, I think, every iteration.
Okay,
And the maps are based on that.
I still, let's take a closer look, cause like, the opt-in, the opt-out and everything.
Well, and because that was my understanding as well. and
Yeah.
There's actually still a little bit of ambiguity in that, and so I'm grateful for clearing up.
Yeah.
What I felt like was ambiguity to go towards what I had understood was the intention of.
Right, but I want the ambiguity to be cleared up in favor of housing where municipalities feel they have room to grow.
Right, and I.
And that's tier 1A and.
I agree, plus, I want there to be good guardrails.
Yeah.
On that development, which is where the bylaw.
I think this is the conversation of today.
Yeah.
Because tier 1A and B are really important to us.
I agree, yeah.
And important to the towns that they go forward.
Yeah.
To math is, they need to be clear on what their options.
Right, onward. So noted, a little red flag goes on that page.
So then the next instance of amendment are the tier 1A requirements. My sections are up to page 14, so I don't know how much debate you wanna have over this right now, but the House went with a sort of merge between your tier 1A requirements and their tier 1A requirements. There is a mix from both lists. So you can maybe compare them unless you want me to go through that now.
You're saying your last section is 14?
No, page 14, I have like many more things to
That's what I
get.
thought. Okay, let's peruse it.
So-
Have the opportunity to, and we'll figure out
More time.
more time.
Yes.
More time. This was a way to get a running start.
Hey, it's great. It's a good start.
So the 15th and 7th amendment, which is on pages 10 and 11 into 12, these are the interim exemptions that you passed. They made a few small changes to them. So it's still 75 units or fewer in a Newtown Center, Grove Center, NDA. They've added served by public sewer or water services or soil that are adequate for wastewater disposal. They have also added that the exemption shall not apply. I'm on page 10.
Yeah,
In
I see
subdivision
some of
number
that,
1.
language you just said, but not all of it.
So on page 10 in subdivision 1, this is the
Yeah.
interim exemption.
Yeah.
It's 75 units or fewer in an NDA, a Newtown Center, Growth Center,
Yep.
NDA, served by public sewer.
There it is, okay.
Or water or soils.
Yeah.
Additionally, the last sentence has new language, so this exemption shall not apply to the areas within map corridors and floodplains, except for those areas containing pre-existing development. And new areas suitable for infill development.
29201 is a cross reference to.
The flood hazard.
Yeah.
Area for corridor rule that we have cited in numerous other places that has a definition for infill.
Thank you.
So next on page 11, this is the 50 units or fewer of housing located entirely within a designated village center and within 1/4 mile of its boundary with permanent zoning and subdivision bylaw and served by sewer or water or soils that are adequate for wastewater disposal. So it has the same language that is in all 3 of these designations have in terms for designations have this same language about permanent zoning and subdivision, and then sewer or water or soils. And then they've also added again the except in river corridors and floodplains, except in those areas with suitable for infill.
Did we have 10 acres or less?
Yes. And then finally, this section is the unlimited housing exemption in designated downtowns. Oh, so in 2, one of the things they did do, number 2, previously had not only been for village centers, but it also had the urbanized area.
The trains.
Exemption, that has been struck from this section. But then the designated downtown for unlimited housing,
That's good.
again, it has the permanent zoning subdivision bylaws, sewer or water or soils adequate for wastewater disposal, and then
Can I just clarify, strong in that section are this village, urbanized area and the transit corridors.
yes. The 16th instance of amendment, all it did was strike the definition of transit route because it is no longer in the exemption section. And then on page 13, there are a few changes on 13 and 14 from the municipal zoning section. So the 17th instance of amendment is amended, and the 18th both amend 4412. And so first, The House went back to duplexes as an allowed use, which is current law.
Yeah.
And, it now reads, duplexes shall be an allowed use with the dimensional standards that are not more restrictive than is required for single unit dwelling, including no additional land or lot area than would be required.
So one,
Is this where we have the clarifying language about a quad platform?
That is the
Actually,
Yeah.
yes, it is. So this is a small instance of amendment. It is not getting rid of your quadplex
Oh,
language.
it's not getting rid of.
It is not getting rid of it.
Okay.
This is so it is very important here when you're comparing these documents, these are instance by instance amendment, this is only changing this sentence. So the only change in this sentence was going from your version had permitted use, this is going back to allowed, which is what is currently in the statute. Additionally, in the 8th instance of amendment, in your version in 441212. You had this language about any lot that is smaller than 1 acre, but granted a variance not more than 10% shall be treated as 1 acre for the purposes of the subsection. That's on page 88 in the Senate proposal of amendment. That language has been struck. The House had some conflicting testimony on it and they didn't know what to do, so they removed it.
I'm sorry, which instance was that?
That is the 18th instance of amendment.
And it's page 88 in our document.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's do one more and then put it at the bottom of the page.
No, I think we're gonna do the last 3, because they're very short.
Oh, right, because we get the tax after that, thanks, sorry,
So,
and their strikes.
I mean, you're gonna have lots of conversation,
Yeah.
but they're short for me to explain.
Yeah.
So they deleted sections 57, 58, and 59. Section 57 was the lot coverage bylaws, they deleted that. Because municipalities already have the authority to do this, but municipalities would be required to under this provision. Section 58. This was the 180-day deadline for municipalities to make a decision on permits.
We struck it, they struck it.
They did. And then section 59 was moving the 10-person appeals to 25 people. They have struck that so that it remained at 10. And then I will just say Kirby started to explain section 58, 68 is also part of mine, so that's the downtown village and tax credit program. Again, Ways and Means wants to take a holistic look at what the new designated areas look like. Because this would be substantially adding a potentially much larger areas that would qualify for this, they want to look at all of the areas once they are beginning to be designated. That would probably be part of the technical corrections that I have been asking for a few weeks now. That will need to happen as the new designated area program gets launched.
Perfect timing, fantastic.
Thank you for that.
So we didn't get to hear from Mr. Gray, so why don't, if fine, I'll check on what our calendars and maybe we can come back at lunchtime at
My guess is we'll be-
high level.
Finance is supposed to be at lunch,
Yeah,
Yeah, that
because
was,
Anne was trying to meet at 9. Just let me know.
Oh, that's true.
remember that was negotiated at 8 o'clock.
so I'll
We'll
work
find.
on the calendar and then send an email on